There we go. All right, so we have the privilege of having Zach Wagner join us on this call. And so, Zach, we've been lucky enough to have a lot of you high rollers from NatCon. I mean, you certainly got everybody's attention. You're one of them that we're like, man, what a banging last couple years you've had. So I want to frame this properly here. Some of the retail guys don't know who you are. So let me see if I got this right. You just correct me if I have any of the details wrong. But you, like many of us in March of 2020, were given the news of like, hey, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, guys. Let's just shut the office down. Uncle Gary shows up and helps us out financially. But obviously, that 2 weeks turned out to be much longer. It was you, your recruiter, and 5 reps. So it wasn't a large team, but 5 good people, I'm guessing, 5 people that you were pretty tight with. And since that moment, right, again, I'm looking at COVID as being kind of a moment for a lot of people. You've opened up 4 first-generation offices. You got some great kudos, obviously, at NatCon for promoting Owner of the Year. You shared with me some of your strengths, and so this is, really what we want to talk about. But anything you want to correct me or add to the intro before we really dive into this?
No, yeah, that was on the money. I was in Chicago. I'm on AT&T residential. I got promoted out of Baltimore out of Eric Chapman's office. I was on Verizon residential. I was in Chicago for a couple of years. I had not promoted, but I ran a pretty strong office. And yeah, COVID hit, but we had a lot of goals we were really set on. So despite COVID, I don't think we were really going to accept that COVID was going to slow down the goals, which was one of the things that was working for us. And yeah, I promoted Nate Weber out to Alabama on AT&T, like shortly after COVID. And then I promoted Mario and he took over Chicago for me. I promoted him in and I moved to South Carolina because I had one of my goals was to get to North or South Carolina for family purposes, for family support. And so that was like a big goal for us. And Mario got promoted to management. He took over Chicago. I took 5 people to Columbia. And then I grew that office. And I just promoted 2 first-gen deals simultaneously in May this year. So they moved with me July. We got here to Columbia, South Carolina, July 2021. So they are now open. And Aaron was actually #1 on his Verizon 5G program last week for the first time. So that's cool. So Aaron DeStefano went to Little Rock on Verizon 5G and Gabby went to Baton Rouge, Louisiana on AT&T. And now I am trying to get the office back rocking and rolling. Yeah.
Well, something you're D4 at. I mean, to bounce back and get your small crew to a healthy size where you're ready to promote out again is obviously one of your expertises. So one of your strengths you said was, just strategy. Sounds like you're a pretty good planner and strategic thinker. So walk us through that.
Yeah. So like this is all owners, I'm assuming, right? So like planning from a management perspective.
Correct.
I'm guessing.
All owners on the call.
Yep. So I'm a big Stephen Covey guy, as me and Jamie have talked about before. So I'm big on like the big rocks, little rocks. I plan multiple times, like a week throughout the week. I plan on I start planning. I really started thinking about my weeks, like obviously like 2-3 weeks, like in advance. I'm already thinking about like a couple weeks ahead of time. I'm just brainstorming, but I start putting a legitimate plan down on Thursday. I do that with my managers. So I just got off that call, onto this call. So we plan for like an hour what we're going to do next week. And I think that might shift a little bit as I have different offices and different time zones on different programs. But what I'll do is I'll always have the offices planned together. So like, for example, if I have an office that's on the West Coast, that office is going to join me. My guys are all East Coast and Central time, but they're going to join me even if it's inconvenient until there's a couple West Coast offices and that guy can maybe run that time zone or run that program's planning call because right, we have AT&T and Verizon 5G different programs. So the plan doesn't always like match, but it was very easy when my first couple deals, we were on the same program. We sat there and planned together. What are we going to do day by day for our calls? Now I run a virtual office, a virtual organization, which is a little bit different. But that requires a lot of planning, different Zoom links, different time frames. But yeah, we plan on Thursday. We plan again on Sunday morning. And I use the rest of Sunday to put together my individual plan. And I use Stephen Covey, like planning strategy as far as like my individual plan. But I don't know if that answered your question, Jamie. But I feel like we plan more than a lot of owners do. Like 2 hours legitimate, like sitting planning, per week.
And so what would the East Coast owners have to do with the West Coast owners? Like why is that a together function?
Since we're virtual, we do a lot of calls like together or individually, just depending on what the offices need. So that's just personally what I do. If I ran like the in-person office, it might be a little bit different. I'd still get my guys on the plan though, just to maybe inspect more, right? Maybe I'd do a 20-minute like individual inspection with, if I was in person, my guy was in person. We're not going to coordinate our whole plan, but I'd probably walk through, do we have Monday through Saturday like mapped out on Thursday generally? Things happen Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So on Sunday morning, let's finish it, right? But like, for example, next week, we're going to run 3 days like separate from each other. All the offices will run together, but 2 are going to be the iPhone 14 gets launched. We're going to talk about wireless as an overall office. And like, that's going to be a big group campaign meeting, right? So I think it's good for the guys. That helps with some of the smaller offices too. I do that with all my rookies. They do like the calls with me because they're like small, right? So I think you guys remember starting your office and it's like, all right, let's run campaign. There's 4 of us, right? So, or 6 of us, whatever, right? So I think that's what we do planning wise. Like I said, the virtual requires more, I think, moving parts. If you're in person, you're running your own show. Probably need to plan with your partner if you have a partner or whatever your situation is. But regardless, when I was in person, I had a partner in Chicago. I still planned like almost a similar amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you put a lot of merit on planning. If you plan well, the execution sort of takes care of itself.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we just like, it's just so not replicable. Like one time Eric came to my office, and sometimes with our experience, we can just like, feels like we need to go over this week, right? Like it's not really a replicable thing. I think a lot of times managers just like, I feel like I should go over this, but there's like no, are we looking at Salesforce? Is there any thought actually put behind that plan that you came up with? Or is it like you felt like this, So yes. A lot of emphasis on planning.
Okay, awesome. And you said another one of your strengths is just having key conversations.
Yeah, I was like, mainly when I was texting that to you, I was talking about like when to promote out a guy, like how to coach the top guy and not let them get out or get too far along with crew building, and unless they're doing things that work, right? So the way I like to build my offices, or at least what's been working, is I always have like 5 first gens at least in my office personally. And the reason why is because I always have like 15 plus second round interviews, right? And if you have only a handful of first gens, you have that many interviews. If you're not taking interviews as the owner, a lot of times I find people just like feeding like a lot of resources to a top guy that's not doing everything right. And what's everything right? I mean, you guys know, like it's probably different. Every top guy has like their thing, but like, if you have a lot of first gens, you can put the guy who's not quite doing the thing on ice or on the bench and work on the other guys. And so instead of having an office where you have an assistant manager, but you only have 15 people in your office, if you have an assistant manager and you only have 15 people in your office, it's not a real assistant manager. You fucking gave that guy a promotion, right? Like you just like gave them all the resources. That's not really an assistant manager. Assistant managers got to earn the assistant management promotion. There'd be 20 guys in the office. I think it's different depending on the program and retail or whatever, but that's what's because like promoting out, you can't promote out if you can't get a 12, 15K wire and they get a 10K wire. And you can mess around with those numbers depending on your opinion, your standard, but like, are they profiting and you still cranking like on the day of promotion? If that's not the case, I don't think it's a real promotion. A promotion means we've gotten so big here that like we should expand and we would do more separately than we would together, so that ensures that both offices grow after the promotion. But then you have an assistant manager who's like super qualified if you don't have a lot of first gen. So the conversation piece is I really referring to like stopping the show on the, like developing the top guy where they're actually doing all the right things. And not, I think people are uncomfortable having those conversations. They feel like they rely on the guy, so I'd say one of the things I make sure I do is I coach the guy pretty hard, and you have indifference because you should be building the crews together.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? I don't know if that made any sense, but I think it's a pandemic. The new pandemic is people are avoiding conversations like the plague. They're fucking like so unconfrontational nowadays. I think that doesn't work if you want to get good people. Because Chapman had the balls to like suspend me. He like sent me home a couple times, right? Like I was the top guy, and he like sent me home. And it's like one of those like I might quit from this, So I think you got to have that with your own guys.
So you're not afraid to have those convos. Are you kind of following the principles of crucial conversations?
Yeah. Crucial Conversations book that I've skimmed over, right? Emotions run high. State, a little bit of state training. I don't know if you guys teach that at all. I think my tip with conversations, my biggest thing that I've come up with having conversations, that the way I teach it is if you just lead with what they want when you're having the conversation, right? So like you want to get promoted, and do well. The thing you're doing doesn't work for that goal. It's impossible, right? So like when I'm fixing the problem, it's based off of, I'm leading with like what they want, not what I want. But I'm not going to let them do. The thing is, I'm in front of it early and often conversations, So yes, but yeah, Crucial Conversations as well. It's a good book.
Okay, good. So what else? What other gold can you drop on us?
I don't know. What do you guys want to know? You guys are all beasts on here. At least some of the guys that I recognize a lot of these names. You guys have any questions, like specifically I can go through?
So when you're planning,
Mm-hmm.
what are you essentially planning? Like, what's your breakdown of it? Because I'm sure you categorize it in terms of what you're planning.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you break down what you're exactly trying to drive in terms of behavior?
When I'm planning, I like to use a lot of groups. Like going virtual, you can do breakout rooms. In office, you can just break the team up. I like to do like 3 simultaneous meetings or 2 simultaneous meetings, like during at the same time, right? So like maybe there's a leaders meeting on blank. That's going to be based on what that group generally needs, right? Maybe there's a sales workshop with this group focusing on blank, overturning late objections, whatever that group needs. And then maybe there's another group, advanced crew builders, to have the interview down. They don't need to be in the interview leaders meeting. They need to be in the crucial conversation meeting, right? So to do that, you need to make sure there's people qualified to run all of those, but there usually typically is at least, you can at least break, I mean, that's typical, right? Top campaign meetings and leaders meetings, right? So each day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's usually habits or something general for Monday, sales focused and leadership, like broken up for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and always big picture Friday, opportunity meeting or a guest speaker, Saturday game. As is one thing I think that's a little different is with the in-person. I think a lot of people with the in-person focus a lot on energy, right? It's not always a lot of content, because I've run offices like that where it's like, we taught the guys 20 minutes of content, but we did drills or like, energy things for 40 minutes, and you don't have the energy. Are you teaching the guys a foundation of actual knowledge? Do they actually know things? So I've told people like, yeah, I run meetings for an hour and then I run the morning meeting. Then like an hour of stuff, it's like, that's so much. It's impossible. I could never do that. You could. You definitely could. But yeah, that's how I plan kind of you each day breakdown, Dominic.
Thank you.
Yep. Like to definitely get a lot of other offices on, or go to I have other offices once like in person. Guest speakers, I think is huge for Friday on like all different programs, all different markets, retail, res, B2B. I think that's like a thing I never got away from. We're going down the track of sales guys, to make like just the sales, right? Not everybody has to get promoted, but that happens sometimes when we don't expose them to those things, right? So.
Yeah, you can certainly expose your team to a bigger picture if you've always got a guest speaker coming in on Fridays, and it's kind of like, oh, we work with Amazon. Well, yeah, that guy, he's running the top office on Amazon. Oh, we work with Verizon. Like, yeah, he's a top producer on Verizon. So no question, for the newer people, it does expose them to just a much grander picture. So that's great. How much face-to-face time are you getting with you guys?
Yeah, so a lot of people are like, well, how do you build relationships? Well, we team night every week, because team night's got to be planned out and a thing that's intentional. I'd still do 48-hour dinners. I go hang out with the guys in person, one-on-one. I think group hangouts is, in my opinion, I think group hangouts are overrated. I think group hangouts are cheap ways to knock out multiple birds with one stone, but you get more of a emotional bank account deposit when you give somebody your one-on-one time. And groups are not the one thing I do like about breaking the guys up a little bit where they're not in the office together all the time is the peer bonding is sometimes not productive, too much. If their relationship with the peer is stronger than the relationship with their leader and you, that's like actually not as productive because they can't help each other, So like one of my promotions, Gabby, she was really good at having crew night. She would have crew night, but she wouldn't hang out with her guys one-on-ones. The crew ended up building stronger bond with each other than they even did with her because of so many crew nights. You know what I mean? So kind of go down if they're doing well, it's like there's crabs in the bucket theory. If you guys have ever heard of that, person's doing great, they rise with each other. But if they're not doing great, they bring each other down. But yeah, and I do road trips. So in res, road trips is big. I know retail it's a little different, but I do a lot of road trips to territory that's not getting hit. And that's in person. So when I do a road trip, they won't do the calls if it's like a trusted leader running it. And they are running their own company for a week in person. And I think that's good. And I'm going to send a road trip to Danny Gioni's office in Atlanta. That's an in-person office. They will spend a week in Atlanta, go in there every week, full suits, do the thing, right? And then we with each other. So I think you have to have those things like planned in place. But yeah, we're not missing too much FaceTime. We're doing team nights, we're doing crew nights, 48 hours. I go out with the guys, and then road trips.
That's great.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Any questions for Zach here, guys? Again, to Zach's point, there's some heavy hitters on here. Anything we want to learn from Zach while we have him?
Sure, I'll ask a question, Zach. So you're on B2B or you're on res? You said res.
I'm on res.
So what's recruiting like in like your prelims? Like how are you getting people
to go knock on doors? How do you do that?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I know everybody, it's the same.
No, it's funny. It's just because like it's all I know. But
yeah.
I would think the same thing. I was a retail guy. How do you get people to knock on doors? I think you have to do a good presentation on what we do. It makes sense. Like we have leads. For same people who do retail, it's like you guys probably have a part of your interview where you're like, yeah, we don't like knock on doors. That's crazy. Like we get people when they're shopping, like there's probably something built into I've interviewed that sales. Oh my God, they knock on doors. That's crazy. Then you're bothering people when they're eating dinner, right? Like we have a similar thing. Yeah, we have the lead. So we go to people, we have like their name and like what services they have and their address. It's like a little bit more of a strategic approach. We like actually know who we're talking to for the most part, and we know they can actually get service versus like trying to wave somebody down and see if they even qualify for service. You wave them down, they can't even qualify because you're like, You guys understand the difference, right? So like there's a way to hit the hot spot on like the difference of campaigns. For us, it's like I really hit on leads. We have leads. We're going to areas that just got fucking fiber optic cables. It's like shooting fish in a barrel because it's a more the consumers in that condensed area are more likely to buy than like someone random.
So are you selling the job in your prelim? Or are you selling the opportunity you find yourself doing more?
I think you
Like,
need to explain the field. You don't sell the job, but you explain the field because I don't want them coming in and not understanding that we're going into the field, right? But I always explain the way our interview presentation, like just personally for my orders, explain like why what we do makes sense. AT&T spent 7 figures on these lines in an area, right? And like, do you know what fiber optics is? Oh, no, exactly. And you're a young professional, right? So you think the average 40, 50, 60-year-old homeowner knows what it is? No, exactly, right? So like, that's why we have jobs. We educate people with what the new lines do. We get AT&T a return on their investment in these areas, and it makes sense for this reason. And then I go over a management training program, right? Like that's for the entry level. That's what we're interviewing for. Me personally, I'll tell you what position I'm in. Currently, I'm a team leader. And I'll explain the path to manage, why I started in this industry. Sales is cool. That's awesome. I'm doing a great job. I'll explain kind of like what the growth tracks for people who do well. You need to break down like the CDC or management training program. I'm sure you guys all have like a similar version of it, but I think you need to explain the job, but you definitely need to explain the growth opportunity. I think people are looking for different things though. Some people are just looking for a sales job, which is
yeah,
fine.
I was curious.
Yeah. It's a good question. That is a good question.
But I'm assuming, Zach, you would say that you are the opportunity. Like the opportunity to work with you, your culture, like that's got to be the precious secret sauce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like from a leader perspective, conducting an interview, right? I thought that was more of what he's referring. I think the word selling the job, if you're trying to sell anything, it's probably not going to work. The way you start candidates is awesome. Step 2 of a conversation. Like you build impulse with people by asking questions, not by presenting. So what really starts a candidate in any job would be probably the questions I'm asking.
Like what?
Like an impulse curve. An impulse curve, y'all, you ever seen an impulse curve? You build the impulse in step 2 by asking questions. So you build interest, it's a deeper question. So asking them about, yes, themselves, what they've been doing, what they're looking for, right? That's like actually builds more interest in people. It's like how to win friends and influence people. He has like a whole chapter on being a good conversationalist and like how to get someone interested in talking to you. And it's actually not by being interesting, but being interested in them, asking awesome questions. They tell the story about a woman who was like, Dale Carnegie wrote the book, and he's like, she was so interested in, she said she was telling people he was the best conversationalist. He went to like a dinner party or something. And she was like telling people, he got word of it that she thought he was like the best conversationalist like she ever talked to, right? And she's like this socialite woman. And he was like reflecting on what he even talked to her about. And he's like, I didn't really talk about myself barely at all. I talked about, I think it was like botany. Like she's a fucking very interested, like she's interested in like planting and like flowers or something like that. And like he was asking her all these like genuinely interested, curious questions about her favorite subject. And then like she went on to tell other people he's such a great conversationalist. I don't know if that makes sense. So if you guys don't really know that, that's like, I mean, you all know that you're managers, but like that kind of how I break down an interview. I put a lot of emphasis in step 2. Step 3 just needs to be kind of a, what's the bullet points in step 3? Keep it short and simple. It shouldn't be a sales pitch. Anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just reminding me of a convo we had with Gary. He did some mock interviews, and I think that's one of the things everybody got a good.
Gary's a
good
master
glimpse.
of this.
Yeah.
I had lunch with Gary the other day. We were in Vegas. Brennan was there. They're drafting their fantasy team, and I got lunch with Gary the next day, and we like talked for a couple hours. And he's so good at not talking about himself. It's Gary Paulson. Like he's like way more like to talk about experience-wise than me. And I should be the one asking him questions, but he's so good at just asking me questions,
Mm-hmm.
I left like, that was a great lunch. Gary's awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Like, damn, he's so good at making you feel like he cares, so people will start with you if they feel like you're a person that's going to help them get to their goals, and that's how they get that vibe.
Yeah. Awesome, Zach. Well,
Yeah.
Zach, we appreciate you setting the pace and your time here today. Thank you a ton. Keep up all the great work, and we hope to. I mean, feel free to use any of us on your Friday calls as well too. Because
I was gonna say, you guys are, I appreciate you guys having me on. I'd love to have you guys flip it back around, do one-on-ones with my guys, or run a call. I appreciate it. Thanks, y'all.
Okay. Thanks,
Yeah.
Zach. See you guys.